The morning fog hung low over the sleepy town, clinging to the streets like a shroud, hiding the sun and muffling the sounds of life. Inside a small, worn diner on the corner of Main Street, the smell of frying bacon and brewing coffee mingled with a quiet sense of routine. Lily, the waitress, wiped a counter for what felt like the 1,000th time that morning, her hands moving automatically while her mind wandered elsewhere. She had always been shy, painfully so, the kind of person whose voice barely rose above a whisper even when she tried to speak. Most days, she stayed in the background, unnoticed by the bustling world outside, content to serve coffee and pie to strangers who never looked past her apron. But there was one small, quiet corner of her life where she felt courage. A small boy no older than 10 came in every day at noon. He wore faded clothes and carried a tattered backpack, his shoes scuffed and his hair unkempt. He never said a word to anyone, and no one seemed to notice him. Lily, however, had noticed from the very first day. He would sit in the same booth by the window, his eyes downcast, tracing invisible patterns on the table with a finger. Sometimes she imagined the stories he carried in those silent eyes, stories of loneliness, hunger, and longing for a world that had forgotten him. Every day, without fail, she made sure a warm plate of food found its way to him. Sometimes it was the special of the day, other times a slice of pie and a cup of milk. She never asked his name, never pressured him to speak, because she understood in her heart that kindness, real kindness, required no words. She left it on the table when she brought him his coffee, sliding it quietly toward him before moving back to her duties, pretending she had merely brought someone else's order. And every day, the boy would look up briefly, just a flicker of gratitude in his eyes, before returning to his silent world. If you believe in kindness and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel, because stories like these remind us that one small act can change a life forever. Lily had her own battles. Behind her shy smile and gentle demeanor, she carried scars she rarely spoke of. Her father had walked out when she was young, leaving her and her mother struggling to make ends meet. Money was always tight, and sometimes the diner's meager wages weren't enough to pay the bills. Yet somehow, she always found a way to feed the boy. Sometimes it meant skipping her own lunch, other times scrimping from her meager savings. It was a sacrifice, yes, but one she didn't regret. It was the only way she felt she could fight back against a world that often felt cold and indifferent. The boy never asked for anything, and that was part of the quiet miracle of it all. There was no obligation, no expectation, just a simple exchange of unspoken trust. He had a fragility that tugged at her heart, a way of carrying himself as if he were made of glass, ready to shatter at any harsh word or glance. And yet, despite his quiet, almost invisible existence, Lily felt something shift in him over time. A subtle confidence in his posture, a small smile that would curl at the corners of his lips when she left an extra treat, a spark of light in eyes that had been dim for far too long. Life in the diner carried on, the rhythm steady but predictable. She knew the regulars, the lonely truckers, the tired office workers, and the young couples in love. She knew when someone was having a bad day and when a stranger might need a comforting word. But nothing prepared her for what happened one crisp morning in late spring, when the air smelled of fresh rain and the town still carried the sleepy haze of dawn. It started with the sound of engines, low at first, then growing louder until the quiet street outside was filled with the rumble of vehicles. Lily looked up from her counter and froze. 5 black SUVs had pulled up to the diner, sleek and intimidating, their polished surfaces reflecting the pale morning light. Out of each vehicle, men in suits stepped down, moving with precision and purpose, their eyes scanning the diner as if searching for someone specific. A chill ran down her spine. This was no ordinary morning. The boy was already there, seated at his usual booth, quietly eating the breakfast she had left for him. But he didn't flinch at the sudden commotion, didn't even look up. Lily, however, felt a wave of panic. Her heart raced as she tried to make sense of what was happening. The men in suits didn't speak, didn't wave, just walked toward the diner in a manner that made it clear they meant business. Her first instinct was to hide, to disappear behind the counter where no one would see her. But something held her in place, a mixture of fear and resolve. She had protected this boy for months, quietly, without recognition or reward. And now, she couldn't let him face whatever was coming alone. The leader of the group, a tall man with sharp eyes and an expression that brooked no nonsense, stepped inside the diner. The air felt thick, electric, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Lily tried to remain calm, Smoothing her apron with trembling hands, her voice caught somewhere deep in her throat. And then the man spoke, not to her but to the boy, using a name that sounded almost sacred. "Ethan," he asked. The boy's eyes widened, a flicker of confusion and fear passing across his face. And then the strangest thing happened. Lily realized she knew him. Or rather, she realized she had been silently helping him all along. Ethan had been in the foster system, moving from one home to another, surviving on scraps and handouts. The 5 SUVs, the suited men, they weren't here to intimidate him. They were here to bring him home. Suddenly, the diner seemed too small, too fragile, to hold the enormity of the moment. Lily felt tears prick her eyes as she watched the scene unfold. One of the men knelt down, speaking softly, gently to the boy, coaxing him with the same care Lily had tried to show every day. And then, as if the world had shifted, Ethan stood, hesitated for a heartbeat, and then walked toward them. His steps were small, but deliberate, and for the first time in a long time, he looked as though he belonged somewhere. Lily's chest tightened. She had spent months watching over this quiet, fragile boy, feeding him, protecting him in small, invisible ways, and now she realized her actions had mattered. More than that, she realized that kindness, even when unnoticed, could ripple outward in ways one could never predict. The suited men turned to Lily, nodding in gratitude, as if recognizing that without her quiet, persistent care, Ethan might never have trusted anyone enough to take this step. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of relief, pride, and overwhelming emotion. The diner, once just a backdrop to her routine life, had become the setting for a miracle she had never imagined. As the SUVs pulled away, carrying Ethan to a new life, Lily stood in the doorway, watching until they disappeared into the morning mist. The street felt impossibly quiet again, but it was no longer the same. Something in her had changed. She had been small and shy, unnoticed by the world, but she had made a difference in the life of a child who had no one. And that, she realized, was more powerful than any recognition or reward. Days passed, and the diner returned to its usual rhythm. Lily continued to serve coffee and pie, her hands moving on autopilot, her mind still replaying the events of that extraordinary morning. She thought about Ethan often, wondering how he was adjusting, if he was smiling, if he felt safe at last. And though a part of her ached at his absence, she also felt a profound sense of hope. She had learned that small acts of love, done quietly and without expectation, could change the course of a life. If this story touched your heart, if you felt the quiet power of kindness and the courage it takes to make a difference, please like, share, and subscribe, and take a moment to comment. Tell me about a time when a small act of love changed someone's life. Your story could inspire someone else today. Lily never saw Ethan again, not in the diner, not in town. But every time she wiped down a counter or poured a cup of coffee, she felt his presence in a way that was almost tangible, a reminder that her quiet acts had mattered. And sometimes, just sometimes, when the morning sun broke through the mist and lit the diner in a golden glow, she imagined him sitting at that booth, smiling, knowing that he was finally home. In the end, the world didn't notice Lily. Most people never did. But one small boy did, and in her own quiet, shy way, she had given him a chance at life, a chance at love, a chance at belonging. And that, she realized with a deep, steady certainty, was everything. If you've been moved by Lily's story, please leave a comment below. Share your thoughts, share your feelings, and honor the quiet heroes in your own life. They are everywhere, often unnoticed, but their impact lasts forever.